Willkommen zurück bei Mentale Fitness. Für dieses Video habe ich tatsächlich 2 Monate gebraucht. Ich habe die letzten 2 Monate damit verbracht, die amerikanische Presse und Alternativmedien zu verfolgen, um am Ende dieses Video zu erstellen. In diesem Video werde ich dir viele Lügen zeigen, die in Deutschland und wahrscheinlich auf der ganzen Welt über Trump verbreitet werden und das sogar live auf Kamera. Wir dürfen nicht zulassen, dass das zur Normalität wird. Außerdem wirst du erschreckend feststellen, dass Deutschland und Amerika sich so extrem ähneln, dass du dir wünschst, es wäre nicht so. Einige Sachen sind tatsächlich positiv, andere hingegen leider extrem negativ. Ich werde das Video so kurz und knackig wie möglich halten, um dir am Ende einen guten Überblick zu verschaffen. Wir beleuchten die Migrationspolitik und ihre Folgen, warum illegale Migranten, Gangs aus Venezuela, Häuserkomplexe kapern und die einheimischen Amerikaner aus ihren Häusern gewaltvoll vertreiben. Und dann gibt es noch die Migranten aus Haiti, die die Nachbarshunden, Katzen und Vögel aus Parks stehlen, um sie zu essen. Warum Kamala auf offener Bühne mehrmals und lautstark ausgebuht wird. Warum die schwarze amerikanische Bevölkerung ihr nicht glaubt, dass sie schwarz ist und sie von dieser Bevölkerung keine Stimmen bekommt. Und noch vieles mehr. Legen wir los. Kamala wird ausgebuht. Im ersten Clip kannst du ganz genau hören, wie ein Mann aus der Menge sich gegen den Gazakrieg ausspricht und sie verbal attackiert. Daraufhin machen einige Demonstranten mit, sodass Kamala Harris ihren Vortrag unterbrechen muss. Und dann fangen meiner Meinung nach gezielt eingesetzte Leute von der Harris Administration an, die Buhrufe mit Klatschen und Jubeln zu übertönen. Und das Ganze wiederholt sich ständig, dass sie von einigen aus der Menge ausgebuht wird. Und in einem Clip setzen sie sogar bewusst eine Kirchenorgel ein, um auch da die Buhrufe zu übertönen.
We are fighting for America's future. And we understand the opportunity we have before us to turn the page on the fear I pledge to you, I will listen to experts. I will listen to those impacted by the decisions I make and to people who disagree with me. I do believe Paul's message holds great urgency. As a nation, we face real challenges. We carry
So sieht die Lage ein paar Tage vor den Wahlen aus. Die Frage, die sich alle stellen, ist, warum wird Kamala Harris in den USA nicht gemocht? Und in Deutschland wird sie als Heldin oder sogar als Erlöserin porträtiert. Die deutsche Medienlandschaft ist in den letzten Jahren sehr weit nach links gerückt und deshalb wird Donald Trump auch sehr gerne mit Adolf verglichen. Und damit haben die Demokraten ihren Tiefpunkt erreicht. Erst vor kurzem hat Kamala Harris eine Pressekonferenz im Weißen Haus ausgerichtet, um Folgendes zu berichten.
So yesterday we learned that Donald Trump's former chief of staff, John Kelly, a retired 4-star general, confirmed that while Donald Trump was president, he said he wanted generals like Adolf Hitler had.
Sein ehemaliger Stabschef John Kelly behauptet, dass Donald Trump sich Generäle wie Adolf gewünscht hatte. Und genau diese Behauptungen und Aussagen können nicht belegt werden. Außerdem hatte Donald Trump in seiner ersten Amtszeit genug Gelegenheiten, sich wie ein Faschist oder ein Diktator aufzuführen, hatte aber nicht. Und nach diesem Statement von der Vizepräsidentin haben die Mainstream-Medien diese Gunst der Stunde genutzt, um Donald Trump und seine Rallye in New York tatsächlich wieder mit Adolf in Verbindung zu bringen. Abgrundtief peinlich. Und wenn ich es nicht besser wüsste, könnte man den Eindruck bekommen, dass dieser mediale Skandal abgesprochen war. Denn nur ein paar Tage zuvor gibt es die Pressekonferenz, ein paar Tage nach der Pressekonferenz gibt es diesen Bericht von MSNBC. Da kommen in mir Parallelen hoch zu dem angeblichen Geheimtreffen und dem Vergleich mit der Wannsee-Konferenz und der Korrektiventhüllung über die AfD.
Donald Trump's rally at Madison Square Garden comes days after his own former chief of staff went on record to describe his former boss as a fascist. But that jamboree happening right now, you see it there on your screen, in that place is particularly chilling because in 1939, more than 20,000 supporters of a different fascist leader Adolf Hitler packed the Garden for a so-called pro-America rally. A rally where speakers voiced anti-Semitic rhetoric from a stage draped with Nazi banners. When a Jewish protester rushed the stage, the Associated Press reported, quote, instantly, a dozen or more stormtroopers set upon him.
Sie haben seine Rallye mit dem von den Nazis am 20. Februar 1939 verglichen. Kein gesunder Menschenverstand kommt auf solch einen Unsinn.
Ladies and gentlemen, from Madison Square Garden in New York City.
Those pretty faces opposite me stand out in a crowd. Someone picked up.
Zumal haben seit vielen Jahren zahlreiche Politiker und Entertainer den Madison Square Garden genutzt. Wieso wird zu diesen Menschen nicht dieser irre Vergleich gezogen? Der ehemalige Stabschef von Donald Trump, John Kelly, wurde damals gefeuert. Zu Recht. J.D. Vance, der amtierende Vizepräsident von Donald Trump, erklärt in einem ekelhaften Interview, beziehungsweise das ist kein Interview, sondern der Moderator entpuppt sich als Duellpartner, warum Donald Trump Kelly damals gefeuert hat.
I think it's interesting that you think that a magazine writer lied the American people into war.
Well, he encouraged it. He wrote stories that were dishonest.
He wrote a story about the gassing of the Kurds in I forget if it was the Atlantic or the New Yorker, but I'm actually referring to John Kelly talking to the New York Times.
He wrote stories, by the way, where he took what intelligence officials in the American Pentagon bureaucracy said and wrote it as the gospel truth. And this highlights the entire point that I'm making about Trump's foreign policy, is this is a guy who wants to use American troops sparingly. He wants peace through strength. It's why his foreign policy was so successful during his first term. It's all the same people who were wrong about Iraq. They were wrong about the quagmire in Afghanistan. They were wrong about Syria. They were wrong about everything. And now they're coming after Donald Trump because he actually has a realistic and cautious foreign policy.
I'm talking about people who worked for Donald Trump in his first administration. That's
Sure.
what I'm talking about. I'm talking about not just John Kelly, but Mark Milley, who was the Trump-appointed chairman of the Joint Chiefs of
Who
Staff.
disobeyed Trump's direct orders on troop redeployments in Syria.
And I'm talking about the guy that had your job.
A massive violation of his constitutional oath, by the way.
I'm talking about the guy that had your job before Donald Trump's supportive crowd wanted to hang him, Vice President Mike Pence, who said, as you know, that Trump put himself before the Constitution. I'm talking about General Mattis, also Secretary of Defense in Trump's administration. I'm talking about Mark Esper, the Secretary of Defense, who told me that Trump does have fascistic tendencies. John Bolton, H.R. McMaster, Alyssa Farah-Griffin.
Okay, Jake,
These are
you
Trump
going
administration
to
officials.
listen to every Trump administration official? You know, one reason why Kamala Harris doesn't have as many people criticizing her is because she doesn't fire people who fail. That's why we haven't had a real audit of the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal, is because Kamala Harris protects failures in government. Donald Trump fires them. And I'd much rather have the president who fires people who screw up. Now, Jake, no, this is an important point. Kamala Harris.
You did not fire Mike Pence.
Kamala Harris.
He did not fire
is the president.
Mark Milley.
Kamala Harris.
He did not
is the
fire John.
He fired a lot of those people, Jake, and he did because they weren't doing their job. But this is the thing, Jake. We've now spent 5 minutes talking about people in Donald Trump's staff
who think he's not fit for office.
He fired.
Who think he's not fit for office.
Oh, they didn't think he was unfit for office until they had a falling out with him because he fired them. And we're not talking about the public policy.
Well,
we're actually talk about how Americans can't afford groceries.
We're actually
Can we talk about the fact that Americans can't afford the cost of housing? Can we talk about the fact that a lot of people out there in Erie, Pennsylvania, they're the ones who suffer and die when people like Mark Esper and Mark Milley don't obey the Commander-in-Chief.
J.D. Vance inhaltlich zu stellen, gelingt kaum bis keinem Reporter. Er ist smart, respektvoll, er kennt die Zusammenhänge und aus ihm schießen die Argumente wie aus einer Pistole. Und auch hier wieder Parallelen zur AfD. Inhaltlich zu stellen, hat nicht geklappt. Seitdem sind sie auf 18 bis 20% gestiegen und seit Jahren kommt immer wieder und nur diese billige Nazi-Keule. J.D. Vance hat bestätigt, dass Donald Trump inkompetente Politiker rausschmeißt, im Gegensatz zu Kamala Harris. Sie behält einfach jeden Taugenichts. Auch hier sehe ich wieder Parallelen zu Deutschland. Baerbock, Visa-Affäre, noch im Amt. Lauterbach, C-Zeit und RKI, noch im Amt. Scholz, Cum-Ex, noch im Amt. Die Bevölkerung in den USA hat das bemerkt und ist bereit für Veränderung. Nun kommen wir zur Migrationspolitik. Und auch hier hat J.D. Vance massiv gepunktet. Denn durch die offene Grenzpolitik der Linken sind Millionen illegale Flüchtlinge nach Amerika gekommen. Einige von ihnen haben sich zu brutalen Gangs verschworen und machen vielen Amerikanern große Angst.
President Trump was actually in Aurora, Colorado, talking to people on the ground. And what we're hearing, of course, Martha, is that people are terrified by what has happened with some of these Venezuelan gangs.
Senator Vance, I'm going to stop you because I know exactly what happened.
Martha.
I'm going to stop you. The incidents were limited to a handful of apartment complexes, and the mayor said our dedicated police officers have acted on those concerns. A handful of problems.
Only, Martha, do you hear yourself? Only a handful of apartment complexes in America were taken over by Venezuelan gangs, and Donald Trump is the problem and not Kamala Harris's open border? Americans are so fed up with what's going on, and they have every right to be. And I really find this exchange, Martha, sort of interesting because you seem to be more focused with nitpicking everything that Donald Trump has said rather than acknowledging that apartment complexes in the United States of America are being taken over by violent gangs.
Okay, let's just end that with they did not invade or take over the city, as Donald Trump said. I want to move on to
just a few
women.
Apartment complexes, no big deal.
Die Reporterin sagt tatsächlich, dass die Venezuela-Gang nur ein paar Gebäudekomplexe unter ihre Fittiche genommen hat und nicht die ganze Stadt. Merkst du, wie lächerlich sie sich macht? Wäre Donald Trump Präsident und dies wäre geschehen, hätten alle Medienhäuser wahrscheinlich weltweit diese Nachricht schon längst 10.000-fach geteilt und einen Riesenskandal daraus gemacht, wie inkompetent er ist und die Nation nicht beschützen kann. Doch die Mainstream-Medien sind in Amerika auf einer Linie mit der Demokratischen Partei unter Harris und Biden. Ich zeige dir ein paar Ausschnitte, wie brutal die illegalen Migranten vorgehen, um die Amerikaner aus ihren Häusern zu vertreiben.
And new at 10, it's scenes coming out of a movie as the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua are seen breaking into apartment complexes in Aurora, Colorado. This is according to our sister station in Denver. There you can see the group well armed and forcing an apartment door open and making their way in. This has raised concerns amongst residents and Colorado state law enforcement officials. The city of Aurora is issuing a statement today in the wake of national attention following the video's release. As we've reported in the past, Tren de Aragua is one of the fastest growing transnational criminal organizations from Venezuela. According to FBI officials, the gang has now infiltrated its way into the United States through various sectors of the US-Mexico border.
Und es geht noch weiter. In Springfield, Ohio soll es Migranten aus Haiti geben, die in der Nachbarschaft die Tiere essen sollen und Autounfälle verursachen, weil sie sich zum Teil nicht an die Straßenverkehrsordnung halten.
Anthony Harris, the guy who went viral for giving this speech at Springfield's town hall.
These Haitians are running into trash cans. They're running into buildings. They flipping cars in the middle of the street. They're in the park grabbing up ducks by their neck and cutting their head off and walking off with them and eating them like.
And who's been going live on Facebook documenting the constant car crashes from the new Haitian drivers.
Kurzum zusammengefasst, so wie auch in Deutschland gibt es Menschen wie eine Melanie Amann, die vom Jungfernstieg in Hamburg nichts mitbekommt und nach der gefühlten Angst fragt. Und es gibt diejenigen, die vor Ort leben und es nicht nur fühlen, sondern sehen und spüren. Die Migrationspolitik in Amerika ist das Thema Nummer 1 und Donald Trump hat versprochen, Folgendes zu tun.
Mr. President, we have seen drugs coming into our community as never before, as we watched the border as an open door highway, if you will, to bring drugs in, which supposedly was being overseen by Kamala Harris, the border czar, which doesn't know where the border is. My question to you is, how quickly can you shut down the border for us to stop the drugs from coming in?
So, Marty, it's going to be the first order. It'll be done in the first hour of the first day. And you know...
Sollten die Republikaner gewinnen, wird Donald Trumps erste Amtshandlung in der ersten Stunde sein, die Grenzen komplett zu schließen. Außerdem hat er auch versprochen, jede Familie finanziell zu unterstützen, die durch illegale Migranten Schaden genommen haben.
And we will use those assets to create a compensation fund to provide restitution for the victims of migrant crime, and the government will help in the restoration.
Kurzum verspricht er sehr vieles, was vielversprechend ist und dem Land enorm hilft. Er will die Wirtschaft wieder ankurbeln, Lebensmittel und Mieten bezahlbar machen, keine Ideologien in Schulen und Kindergärten, der Frauensport soll für Frauen bleiben und noch vieles mehr. Warum die schwarze amerikanische Bevölkerung ihr nicht glaubt, dass sie schwarz ist und sie von dieser Bevölkerung keine Stimmen bekommt.
And then she was everybody's favorite Hindu Indian prosecutor and attorney general and senator, and now she becomes black. But, you know, I met her daddy, fine gentleman, Professor Harris. And the problem with her being black is Professor Harris says he's Caucasian, mixed Irish and Hindu. He doesn't have any black ancestors, but his Irish ancestors owned a lot of slaves in Jamaica and had them to work on plantation. So if mama is on the birth certificate listed as a Caucasian, daddy says he's a Caucasian Hindu and has no black ancestors, how did she get to be black?
A few days ago, President Trump said he didn't know Vice President Harris was a black woman. I'm trying to figure out what all the outrage is about because she's only black when it's time to get elected. Did I lie? The same black people who are mad at Trump for being confused about her race, ethnicity, nationality, whatever, are seemingly forgetting that while you're touting her as a savior for black people, she identifies as an Asian woman. She chose her side and it wasn't ours.
Harris could be the first black female president of the United States, to which Ms. Jackson replied, "She's not black, that's what I heard, that she's Indian."
We want the border closed. That's probably our biggest thing, is that's affecting black America in a big way.
I'd say men and women's sports. I don't want no man in no woman's bathroom or none of that, so.
Yeah. Also, like the economy, like inflation is crazy right now. Like it's cheaper to rent than own in every state. Trump being a businessman and like where the economy was during his first term, I mean, it's pretty obvious that he's the best choice to fix these problems.
Zum Abschluss zeige ich dir noch die schlimmsten Interviews von Kamala Harris, die sie in den letzten Wochen geführt hat. Interviews, die du vermutlich in den deutschen Medien nicht gezeigt bekommst.
What weaknesses do you bring to the table and how do you plan to overcome them while you're in office?
That's a great question, Joe. Well, I am certainly not perfect, so let's start there. And I think that perhaps a weakness, some would say, but I actually think it's a strength, is I really do value having a team of very smart people around me who bring to my decision-making process different perspectives. My team will tell you, I am constantly saying, let's kick the tire on that. Let's kick the tires on it.
I don't think I've ever heard the former president admit a mistake. A lot of politicians don't. Is there something you can point to in your life, political life or in your life in the last 4 years, that you think is a mistake that you have learned from?
I mean, I've made many mistakes. And they range from, you know, if you've ever parented a child, you know you make lots of mistakes too. Let's just fix this thing. Let's just fix it. Why is there any ideological perspective on it? Let's just fix the problem.
To fix the problem, you're doing this compromise bill. It does call for $650 million that was earmarked under Trump to actually still go to build the wall.
I am not afraid of good ideas where they occur.
So you don't think it's stupid anymore?
I think what he did and how he did it did not make much sense because he actually didn't do much of anything. I just talked about that wall, right? We just talked about it. He didn't actually do much of anything.
But you do want to build some wall.
I want to strengthen.
Madam Vice President, thank you for the time.
Thank you. It's good to be with you, Brett.
You know, voters tell pollsters all over the country and here in Pennsylvania that immigration is one of the key issues that they're looking at this election, and specifically the influx of illegal immigrants from more than 150 countries. How many illegal immigrants would you estimate your administration has released into the country over the last 3.5 years?
Well, I'm glad you raised the issue of immigration because I agree with you. It is a topic of discussion that people want to rightly have. And you know what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, but
right
do you,
now,
just a
which
number.
is-
Do you
but-
think it's
but-
1 million, 3 million?
Brett, let's just get to the point. Okay, the point is that we have a broken immigration system that needs to be repaired.
So your
And-
Homeland Security Secretary said that
Well, no,
85%
but
of
I'm not
apprehensions.
Finished. I'm not finished. We have
It's a
an
rough
immigration
estimate of
system
6 million people
that
have been
needs to be-
released into the country. And let me just finish. I'll get to the question, I promise you. So are you still in support of using taxpayer dollars to help prison inmates or detained illegal aliens to transition to another gender?
I will follow the law.
On the economy, then they trust you.
I think that when you look at an analysis of our plans for what we would do as President of the United States, it has been clear to those who study and understand how economic policy works that moving forward, because I do believe the American people are ready to turn the page on the divisiveness and the type of rhetoric that has come out of Donald Trump. People are ready to chart a new way forward, and they want a president who has a plan for the future and a plan that is sound and will strengthen our country. My plan for the economy does exactly that. His plan would be, again, to give tax cuts to billionaires and the biggest corporations in our country and blow up our deficit.
It's interesting you said turn the page, Madam Vice President. You were asked on 2 different shows last week what, if anything, you would do differently than President Biden. Here's what you said.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
More than
People are
70% of people
exhausted.
tell the country is on the wrong track. They say the country is on the wrong track. If it's on the wrong track, that track follows 3.5 years of you being vice president and President Biden being president. That is what they're saying, 79% of them. Why are they saying that? If you're turning the page, you've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
But you've been the person holding the office.
Come on.
Madam
You
Vice
and I
President.
both know what I'm talking about. You and I both know what I'm talking about.
I actually don't. What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is that over the last decade,
But you're
people
the
have
lever of
become.
power.
But listen, over the last decade, it is clear to me, and certainly the Republicans who are on stage with me, the former chief of staff to the president, Donald Trump, former defense secretaries, national security advisor, and his vice president. One, that he is unfit to serve, that he is unstable, that he is dangerous, and that people are exhausted with someone who professes to be a leader who spends full time demeaning and engaging in personal grievances and it being about him
Madam
instead
Vice
of
President,
the American people.
if
People
that's the
are
case,
tired of that.
If that's the case, why is half the country supporting him? Why is he beating you in a lot of swing states? Why, if he's as bad as you say, that half of this country is now supporting this person who could be the 47th president of the United States? Why is that happening?
This is an election for president of the United States. It's not supposed to be easy. Significance
You
of that.
call Donald Trump, he's misguided. You say now
He's
he
unstable.
is unstable.
He is unstable, Brett.
He's not well. You say he's mentally not stable.
He's not stable.
Let me ask you this.
And-
You
and
told
we
many
should all be
interviewers
concerned.
that Joe Biden was on his game, that ran around circles on his staff. When did you first notice that President Biden's mental faculties appeared diminished?
Joe Biden, I have watched from the Oval Office to the Situation Room, and he has the judgment and the experience to do exactly what he has done in making very important decisions on behalf of the American people.
There were no concerns raised?
Brett, Joe Biden is not on the ballot.
I understand.
And
but
Donald Trump
But
is.
you talked about it.
And Donald Trump
After George Clooney said
and
within a
if
few
you
minutes of
watch
talking to President
Donald
Biden at a
Trump-
fundraiser that he thought this was not the same
Brett,
Joe Biden that we saw on the debate
Donald
stage.
Trump is on the ballot.
I understand. You met with him at least once a week for 3.5 years. You didn't have any concerns?
I think the American people have a concern about Donald Trump, which is why the people who know him best, including leaders of our national security community.
Mein Fazit: Donald Trump sollte der nächste konservative Präsident von Amerika werden. Warum? Na ganz einfach. Er ist erstens der bessere Kandidat. Es gibt nun mal nur die beiden. Zweitens, er hat versprochen, den Krieg zu beenden und für Frieden zu sorgen. Und mit Kamala und den Demokraten weiß niemand, ob wir in den nächsten Krieg geraten. Mir ist bewusst, dass er enorm Gegenwind bekommen wird. Doch auch ein Donald Trump hat zugegeben, dass er in seiner ersten Amtszeit nicht viel Ahnung hatte und viele Feinde in seinen eigenen Reihen hatte, die stets gegen ihn gearbeitet haben. Diesmal ist er schlauer und hat aus der Vergangenheit gelernt. Ich meine, welche Politiker gestehen gerne Schwäche? Bei Kamala kann ich nur Elon Musk erwähnen. Im Interview mit Tucker Carlson hat er die Bedeutungslosigkeit von Kamala Harris unterstrichen. Denn sie ist eine Marionette, die gesteuert wird und deshalb sehr leicht ersetzbar. So Elon Musk. Außerdem hat er in dem Interview erwähnt, dass viele Milliardäre und Millionäre Kamala unterstützen, aus Angst, dass Donald Trump einige dunkle Geheimnisse ans Licht kommen lässt. Rundum könnte ich natürlich noch viel mehr zeigen und berichten, doch dann würde das Video noch länger gehen. Ich habe nun dir das, was ich für wichtig erachte, kurz und knackig zusammengefasst. Danke, dass du das Video bis zum Ende geschaut hast. Wenn dir das Video gefallen hat, bin ich dir sehr dankbar, wenn du es kommentierst und likest und vor allem das Video teilst. Dann checkt YouTube die Relevanz des Videos und es wird noch mehr Menschen angezeigt. Vielen Dank, alles Gute und bis zum nächsten Video.